Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to the final week of February 2024, and welcome into UnAnchoredBoston.com. As always, we're brought to you by Cold Springs RV, your destination for all things camping. And where? We're in New Hampshire, of course, and by the big wheel himself, George Gray, at George Gray's Lexington Toyota. All right, backed by popular demand is a guy that knows as much about football, boxing, and everything in sports as anybody on the planet, and which is thrilled to have him back here. The great Ron Borges is here, and Bob Lobel always handles the official introduction. So, Lobie, take it away, and let's kick this thing off and get it going.
Well, Ronnie, you look great, and you look like you lost a lot of weight, but not since the last time. The last we just didn't point out, but you have, haven't you?
Ever since I stopped working, life is much easier. No stress.
That's what we found out. Anyway, Ron Borges, as Mike mentioned, a great boxing writer, great football writer, and knows as much about everything that we could possibly bring your way. And of course, the whole thing, Lynchy and Ronnie, is the dynasty. It is a hot thing going on right now. And the 4 episodes have come down. Have you seen the whole thing, Ronnie?
I've seen the first 4. I haven't seen the rest. I have a number of friends who have seen the whole thing, and they fill me in on this and that, as I'm sure you guys have too. It's been an interesting journey so far, I would say.
What do you think? What's been the overall impression? Lynchy, same thing. Have you seen the whole thing, Mike?
Yes, I've seen 4.
4 so far. Yeah. So we're all in the same boat on this, but what are the things that each of you guys have heard throughout this whole journey? Because there's 6 more episodes to go. The only thing I've heard is it gets worse from here. I don't mean in terms of quality. I think the production is fantastic, but that's my opinion. So go ahead, you guys.
The production is great. I guess worse depends on which victim we're talking about or who's. One of the things that it didn't really surprise me, but it jumped out pretty quickly was, as with most things, the winners write the story, and in pro sports, the owners never lose. So we know who's writing the story here, and been sort of an interesting mix of I had nothing to do with it, I had everything to do with it, depending on what the issue is. And I have heard going forward that it becomes tougher and tougher on Bill Belichick.
I have heard that myself.
Which, frankly, may or may not be fair. 25 years walks by you in the morning and says hello, and you just walk by him like you've never seen him before. Probably eventually that'll come. Those chickens come home to roost.
What do you think, Mike?
Well, I agree with Ron. I mean, I had the fortune of doing the Patriots All Access show, so I was in the tunnel, in the weekdays, Tuesday, Wednesday mornings, and I would witness the only 2 people in the bowels of the stadium. Kraft would be walking this way, Belichick would be walking toward him, and Belichick wouldn't even acknowledge his presence. He walked right by him like he was invisible. And I said, this is not good, but he's winning, and Kraft has to put up with it. And 3 losing seasons, have gone by when, Kraft finally, gets the hammer again, when he relinquished the hammer for 2 decades.
Anything jump out on you that in the 4 episodes that you've seen that might have been surprising? I mean, I have a list of surprises, but I want to hear what you guys think.
Well, a couple things jumped out to me. I'd be lying if I said they surprised me, because as with you 2 guys, we know all the participants here pretty well. One of the things I found really bothering, and I do think that overall the production and everything is very good. There are some times where it feels to me like there's obvious follow-up questions that don't get asked because they don't want the answer. But one was when Pioli talks about Eric Mangini. First off, he sounded like Don Corleone.
Right.
With the family. The Omerta, and that's okay. But what struck me was, and there was no follow-up question. Had I been there, I would have said, well, wait a minute. Is this like a one-way family? Like, it's okay for you guys to go into his building and cheat and even when he knows it's what you're going to do it, and as I am aware, and you guys may be too, he had warned you, asked you not to do it during the week, and you did it anyway. What about that part of the family? Is that the screw you part of the family? I mean, what are we talking about here? So that one really struck me, and there were a couple of Ernie Adams Black Op statements that just I went
to the grave.
To the grave, right?
To the grave.
And there's reasons why he wants to take some things to the grave, because he's in the middle of them, frankly.
Yeah.
Does it sometimes jump out at you that Ernie Adams was the real coach and the other guy just stood in front and was the front man?
Well, he certainly made it sound like that a couple of times. Like, Bill didn't know what to do in that Super Bowl until he called me.
What should I do, Ernie? What should we do?
Right. And my guess is that was more of, Mike knows his dad was a coach for, 100 years. If you two guys are my chief assistants and we're in a big moment, I probably might say, well, what do you guys think? I may or may not actually care what you think, but I at least sort of ask you. So he made it sound like, this babbling guy was, dissolving on the sidelines, and he needed Ernie to straighten him up. And I thought Ernie did not help Belichick at all with that whole I'll take it to the grave approach, because it just made it look like, I don't care what kind of an apologist you are for them, it just looked like unclean hands. That was not good.
Yeah, I agree. Lynch.
Yeah, he's saying, and I know for a fact that everybody, a number of teams in the league are doing the exact same thing. And blah, blah, blah. He kept circling around. He says, I'm not going to talk about this, but then he does talk about it.
Right.
And then he says no. And this is the most, I'd be curious to find out when the interviews were done with Ernie Adams. Was it done before Belichick was terminated? Was it done like in the last 3 or 4 months?
I think it had to be a year ago, Mike. I think it had to be over a year ago with these guys.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking too, because why would they cooperate?
Why would Belichick sit down for that?
Yeah.
If it hadn't have been done a year.
Somebody, by the way, should have told Bill to loosen that tie, because it looks like his head is going to explode up his neck.
Well, certainly when he cranes his head and, talking about production value.
It reminds me of a high school picture. Remember when everyone tried to look like they had big necks, when the team photo was taken, everyone was like that.
It's true. No, that is true. And I just think that a couple of those sort of things, like I thought the production people, and you guys, have forgotten more about production than I'll ever know, but from my standpoint,
I'll bet on it.
They did a real good job of finding lots of video that not only we hadn't seen before, but that also allowed them to not have to ask certain questions of certain people, because we got it on video. And I thought Armin Katanian, when he was grilling Bill.
You know what? I wrote that down. Stunning. Armin Catania has got guts. I got to say that. He was a very sincere, solid broadcaster, but he took a step up after watching this, the way he grilled Belichick. He would not let him go.
Right. And it also showed you where he's smarter than and smoother than yours truly. Because as I was watching it, this thought came into mind. I was watching with my 7-year-old son, and he said to me, what would you have asked him, Dad? I said, well, he had him down there pretty good, especially when he read the thing. I said, probably after I read it and it was so obvious that there was no loopholes, I probably, knowing me, would have said to Bill, did you go to Wesleyan or like some community college in Kansas? I mean, come on. How could you possibly read that paragraph and conclude anything except,
and Bill said, plainly admitted, well, I made a mistake.
Yeah.
So, right? That was the final answer. Well, I made a mistake.
Right. It's sort of like putting your hands up when there's 55 police officers with drawn weapons around you. Go, like, okay, you got me.
I give high marks to Armin Kantayan for that.
Yeah, that was good. Very good.
Yeah, he was.
Don't you think that Robin Glazer's walk down the hall with a hammer was a little much?
Well, I'm sort of trapped here because I am sworn to secrecy on one thing that goes way back many years, but I did give the person my word at that time. I know why she was carrying that hammer, and that hammer was used more than once, and I'll leave it at that. Which is why Ernie wants to go to his grave with certain information.
Well, there's a provocative statement because
Well, that's all I can say.
I'll be spending all day thinking about the rest of that statement.
Right.
What do you think, Lynchy? What are you going to ask Ron now?
Well, now I'm like, so
You
all right.
play your Armored Containian, best Armored Containian.
So Robin Glazer destroyed the tapes that were still in the Patriots' possession. Why? I thought they were all in the possession of Roger Goodell.
And then there were some others.
Yes.
Okay,
It appeared not
what
on the
others
same
could there
day
be? There could have been
shall we say?
Deflategate. It could have been Deflategate. That was the only one that hadn't happened yet.
That no, they were they were hammering those tapes, and of course there was no Zoom in those days, and they had a like a conference call, and so you'd think the NFL could fly a couple guys up, but I guess they were, they're making so little money they couldn't do it. So they're listening to them pounding with these hammers as they're destroying these suddenly revealed tapes that may be part of the reason that some people are going to go to their grave with certain information. It was crazy. I mean, it just showed you. I thought, I laughed, but it also showed you kind of the paranoid lunacy of the place. It's like, really, what are we doing? You got some lady walking around with a hammer, and
well, that's what I mean. You got to admit the staging was a little much, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it made me laugh. I said, okay.
Oh yeah,
there was in fact a hammer used to destroy some late arriving tapes.
And she said she's talking about wearing high heels. They show her down on her knees with high heels on, picking up pieces of plastic and putting them in a trash barrel. I'm saying, what the hell is going on here?
And I can guarantee you, I was around the National Football League for 49 years, and dozen of those, 10, I guess, was around the Raiders, where a lot of things happened. Never were people breaking up video with hammers. That has never. Ernie can say what he wants. That has never happened anywhere except in Foxborough, Massachusetts. Thank God.
Well, I'm glad they learned their lesson. Then, of course, a couple of years ago, they go to Cincinnati and do the exact same thing. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, but that was different, wasn't it? The Cincinnati thing.
No,
it wasn't.
They were videotaping signals on the sideline from the press box.
Right.
And Cincinnati at the time was one of the worst teams in the league. I'm just saying, why are you doing this to Cincinnati? You could beat them blindfolded.
Right. Well, my information always was that Bill did this in Cleveland too, and his dad was one of the people breaking down the film. So it wasn't like a recent phenomenon. The thing that really struck me, though, like we talked about a minute ago, was that they, after all these years, can look into a camera and say Mangini was disloyal to the family.
Yeah.
When they're walking into his stadium and trying to cheat when he's told them, please don't do it. I mean, what is that?
Let me ask you about the detective or the New Jersey State Trooper who asked to be reassigned and thought he'd have a nice cupcake. Where did they find this guy? How did they convince him to be part of it? And he was pretty good because he was, a character we haven't seen before.
Right. Yeah. I mean, obviously they tracked him down. I mean, I did know of his existence. All these teams have some guy like that, becomes a good sort of semi-retirement gig. Usually, you're usually not taking guys out of there with cameras and everything. But yeah, I mean, that was a great get by them. That not only that they could find him, but they could, convince them to do it. Because a lot of guys, I'm sure, would have said, I don't really need that.
It was like the same Boston cop in a murder in Boston. If you saw that Charles Stewart documentary,
right? Yeah.
Same cop in there, right? He's like, why did he talk?
Right. And I suppose, it's probably a combination of things. Some guys, look, all three of us made a living this way for how many decades? Most people want to talk about themselves for the most part, and what a great job they did or did. If they didn't, none of us could feed our families. And I'm sure that was part of it. Like, yeah, I was the guy who caught him,
Do you think the conversation actually took place between Kraft and Belichick when Kraft said, on a scale of 1 to 100, how much does this mean? And then he said 1, and then he says, you're a schmuck. Do you think that actually?
I believe it did. I've heard that for a long time now, and it's been said publicly by Kraft a number of times and never been disputed by the friends of Bill. You wouldn't expect Bill to say anything, but usually you get a call from one of the friends of Bill saying, "That's bullshit. That didn't happen." And I've never heard anybody say it didn't happen. And it's not. And to be honest, from my experience, it sounds like Kraft. He's not as warm as you guys know. He's not as warm and cuddly as he always tries to appear in public. He'll crush your heart if.
Didn't you think Jonathan was spent a lot of on-camera time in that documentary, much more than I would have expected?
Can't say that I'm surprised.
I
can't say that I'm surprised.
I didn't. Well, okay. Why?
And
why are you not surprised?
That's him. That's him. Look what a tough guy I am. I told Pat Purcell, we can
Right. If the paper was worth anything, I would have bought it.
Yeah, which is a lot of baloney. I mean, they had no real leg to stand on. And quite frankly, they don't want to go into discovery on any lawsuit any more than anybody else did, because that's when the rubber hits the road, as you guys know. Suddenly everybody's being dragged into deposition hearings and sworn under oath to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And they didn't really want that to happen. But it's a great rewrite. I think what was funny about that, you juxtapose that with that clip a bit earlier of Kraft on the phone with Pat Purcell, the owner of the Herald, like they're great buddies, And I believe somebody told me this this week, and I didn't verify it, so it might not be accurate, but they thought it was true that the Herald at that time was printing Patriots Weekly, at their printing plant. So
really,
yeah. So it wasn't quite as one-sided a conversation as Jonathan wanted to make it sound.
So you think Pat caved on that? Just caved on it?
Yeah, I mean, I just think he looked at the whole thing. I wasn't working there at that time, but I think he just looked at the whole thing and said, "There's a headache we don't really need. Okay, one of my guys is going to have to take some fire, but it will go away." And to a degree, it did, but not totally. His only other choice was to really fight the Crafts, and they're a litigious group, and who wants to spend their time, as I say, subpoenaing people and giving deposition hearings on. I personally, I believe they had the story mostly right, and if it had just been written that Patriot employees stayed there and watched the Rams walkthrough, which they're not supposed to do, they'd have been fine. But when they said there's a video and they hadn't actually physically seen the video, which doesn't mean there isn't one. But then that's where they kind of opened themselves up. No one could dispute that the video guy stayed there and came running back, tattletaling, as my little children would say, to the coaches about what they saw, including Marshall Faulk returning kicks.
So this is the first real instance where that hammer could have been used.
yeah, it could have been used, right? And maybe it was, Yeah,
all of a sudden, the pieces fall together.
Sounded like Kraft wanted to use that hammer on Belichick by the end of the thing. And you can't really blame him, because it. Now I happen to think it's more valuable information to possess if you have it. If you notice, they only showed 1 or 2 clips. They knew what they were doing. That you're shooting the down and distance from the scoreboard, and you're shooting the hand signals. If you know anything about football, Mike could go in there and watch the tape later, match it up, and the next time we play him, every time we're in these situations, boom, there's the hand signal. Well, that means this. That means that. That to think that that's no edge.
Well, it's more than 1 in 100.
Yeah, it's more than 1 in 100. Sure.
And there were four different defensive coaches giving signals. Right. And you got to look at the linebacker. The coordinator was Bob Sutton, I think, the old Army coach, right?
Yeah.
That's right. So he's the guy you want to really look at.
Right.
The other guys, linebacker coaches, there's a coach for every position on the team anyway. But Sutton was the guy they were really looking at, right?
Right. And my understanding of it was Ernie who would then
Yeah.
break all that stuff down and keep voluminous. I mean, they not only had the video, then they had voluminous notebooks. Well, if it's only worth 1%, why do you have J. Edgar Hoover spending all his time, looking at these videos and keeping these voluminous notebooks if it's meaningless?
Ernie has always been the man behind the curtain
Right.
that nobody's seen. And there, as you know, there were players there who never knew what he looked like and what he did for a real job. But I was surprised how, here's Ernie leaving his house in the morning, driving in his car on his way to Foxborough and on camera. And this is a guy that was never on camera.
Right.
Why is he everywhere now?
Well, I think in this case, I'm just guessing. I haven't talked to him or asked him. Not that he would talk to me anyway, but I think that he understands, as probably many of the participants do, whether it's accurate or not, this is going to become the official history of these dynastic years, and I want to be part of it, and I want you to know how important I was. I told Belichick to go for it. Bledsoe told Brady to sling it, which I thought some people who were critical of Bledsoe really overstated what Bledsoe was saying. It was typical Bledsoe. If you got all that, just throw the thing. He wasn't taking credit for anything. But I think there's a lot of taking credit for things and making sure that. What's amazing is that certain guys seem to be deeply involved with everything that worked and not involved at all with anything that didn't work. It's kind of interesting.
What a strange phenomenon.
It is quite odd.
Speaking of Bledsoe, I thought he came off pretty well in this whole thing. I mean, and a lot of the whole wildebeest scene where they pointed out that he was stuck in his shoes when the rush was coming, that he really didn't have that mobility. And I'll give you an idea of the example of the production. There was a sound of a wildebeest in the background. If you listen to that, I mean, that's pretty impressive, actually.
And the piece of video they picked out where he looked like, a giraffe being assaulted by all the that you see on the, National Geographic Channel. I thought that I did think he came across pretty well. I thought Brewski's final statements about him were really significant, where he said the Patriot way started with the way Drew handled that situation. Because he could have, you guys all know how popular he was.
Sure.
He could have split that locker room in half if he wanted to.
Absolutely.
And he didn't. Now, I was pretty close with him, as everybody seems to know, and still speak with him, from time to time. And I used to sort of half kidding, but half grumbling, because there was a lot of stuff he said to me off the record that I could use, that I would say to him, So now I gotta watch you on television, saying these things, and then I gotta be, listening to you grumbling about how you really feel here for 20 minutes. It's just kind of, but look, I get it. It was a really hard, difficult situation for everybody involved. Thought he handled it about as well as you could. The one thing maybe they just didn't have it on video, maybe they didn't think of it. One thing I always found really interesting about that time period was he throws the touchdown pass in the AFC Championship game. And if you remember, the sideline explodes and all these guys are running out there and they're, patting him on the back and everything. And as he was coming back toward the sidelines, Belichick turned his back and walked away from him. No handshake, no nothing. And now, hey, maybe he was deeply engrossed in what Ernie Adams was telling him in his earphone. I don't know, what it was, but I've never forgotten that. I always thought that was kind of. I know this is a family show, but I think I can say that I always thought that was pretty chicken shit. Look, the other guy was better, as it turned out, no question. Bledsoe would be the first one to tell you that. The other guy proved to be arguably the greatest quarterback of his time.
Yeah.
And Drew wasn't. But that doesn't mean you can't congratulate a guy who hasn't played for however many weeks it was, several months, and he goes in and makes a throw like that. You should be happy for him.
Sure.
It would seem, and I don't think he was.
But we didn't know then, but what we know now. So it could have been Bledsoe that was starting in the Super Bowl. Because we didn't know when this run was going to end. We didn't know it was going to run for 20 years.
Oh, sure.
It could have been just a 9-game phenomenon, or 8-game phenomenon, and Bledsoe could have. I've told this story a few times, and I won't prolong it. But my room at the Patriots Hotel, right next to Belichick's, the room he used for his office, not where he slept.
Yeah.
So I came back from something, and Brady is sitting on a chair, right next to my room. And I said, "What are you doing here?" And it was Wednesday of Super Bowl week. He said, "Drew's inside, and Bill's telling one of us that we're going to be starting." I said, "Really?" So I pretended I couldn't find my key. I'm like just in the hallway for like 20 minutes. Oh, I dropped it, and waiting, and all of a sudden, now if you walk out of Belichick's room, you can take a left to the elevator. Brady was sitting right there to the right, and he never even looked at Brady. He just opened the door, and you could tell he was just pissed. And Brady stands up, looks at me, and just shrugs his shoulders. Now I'm inside my room, trying to put a glass up the wall, everything. And when he came out, I went, psst, Brady went like this, and that's how it came down, just like that. That simple. And
yeah. Well, I had written a column. Everybody forgot. All the haters have forgotten this, but I had written a column before that decision was made. That at this point they have to stick with Tom Brady. And I still was of the opinion that Bledsoe was in the long term going to be the superior quarterback, and obviously I was wrong about that. But I did feel, and Drew was not happy about that. And I said, "Look, the guys, they won 11 games with this guy. They won 2 playoff games with him, whatever it was. You don't just push horses now. Now, when the spring comes and the fall and the summer comes, then it should be an open competition, which of course it wasn't. But the other thing I found interesting in this subject was they kept talking several times, making it sound like this courageous decision that Belichick made. Well, initially it wasn't a courageous decision. The other guy was dying in a hospital at Mass General, so I mean, he was not going to play quarterback for you. So you're going to put in your second string quarterback, I would think. So that part was pretty easy to me. The only difficult choices were when he first came back, and Brady did not, in the opinion of most people, perform well in that first Rams game, and he concluded that, at least as I understand it, Belichick concluded that I got to pull the trigger. Otherwise, I'm going to have one guy who hasn't played in 2 months and another guy who's not sure if he should be in or not. So that did take some courage in a way, but you're sort of playing with house money. I mean, did any of us think at that point after the Rams game that they were going to the Super Bowl? No. So, okay, you play it out and see what happens. But, even though Drew had some good moments, he also had a couple shaky moments, which in that Pittsburgh championship game, even though he, certainly helped him get there. How do you not go if he's healthy with Brady at that point in time? I don't know. How do you guys feel about it?
Well, I think it was a coin toss, but I think you have to go with the guy that's on a roll, the guy who's won 8 games in a row. It was a tough call because we didn't have the 2 weeks, we had the 1 week between games, and I was just glad I had the room next to Belichick.
Right, lucky you. Well, it's funny because everything has happened before, as you guys know, even though you got to be old enough to remember. There was no real difference between this and when Earl Morrall was the Colts quarterback
Yeah.
in Super Bowl III, and Unitas had been out most of the season with that bad elbow and shoulder, and they got to the Super Bowl, and who was going to who was going to be the starter? And Upton Bell, my pal, was running the personnel department in those days, and Shula made the decision. We're going with Earl Morrall. Well, he did for a while. And then in the second half, as I understand it, he had told Unitas that Unitas was going to start the second half, but then he decided to wait one more drive. And as it turned out, that third period was a long stretch of time there before he finally got Unitas in the game. And Unitas took him right down the field, and they. But then the next time, he threw a pick because his arm was dead. But it was very similar. So, I mean, obviously, you're talking, in my mind, Johnny Unitas is the greatest quarterback who ever lived. So it's a little bit different. But still, you had the other guy. Earl Morrall was MVP of the league that season. So you have to make that choice. I thought the big gamble wasn't so much that season because it didn't matter. Even if they lost the Sioux, it was house money at that point. It was way above everybody's expectation. I thought his big gamble was then moving Bledsoe out of here, and that took courage because you get you're wrong about that one, you get fired. And for a while there, if you remember that next season, it looked like they were wrong. Bledsoe was lightening up the league the first half of the season. Buffalo was 6-2, I think, and they had killed the Patriots in that opening game. And then everything reversed itself.
That was the Lawyer Malloy game.
Yeah. Exactly.
Was there a connection to the Lawyer Malloy activities at the end of that season and the fact that he was traded to Buffalo before the start of the next?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it was all a contract thing. He wouldn't take a cut. And he wasn't the only guy who was asked or forced to take a cut. Ted Johnson had to take a cut. Don't ask me why. And you're talking about the guys who started in the Super Bowl. Now they got to take pay cuts. And Malloy wouldn't do it. And so he did. He waited till the absolute bitter end. There were 4 or 5 days left before the start of the season when he released Malloy. It was on the Friday. And I'm sure the supposition was that, and you guys know how it is at the end of training camp, everybody's jettisoning players. Most teams are maxed out on their money. So I'm sure he thought Malloy's either going to get small money or no money. Well, as it turns out, Ralph Wilson had some extra cash in the petty cash draw or the not so petty cash draw, and Lawyer made out. I mean, he made more money than he would have made, if he had stayed in New England.
Let me. Why did Drew agree to be interviewed for this? What was the upside for him?
I don't know. That's interesting. I don't know. I haven't really talked to him because it's not usually something he wants to talk a lot about.
Yeah.
He has remained friendly with Kraft over the years, and my guess is Kraft asked him, and he agreed to do it. I was surprised his wife, Maura.
She was a star.
She's great.
She was a star. Maura was a star in that show.
And she's smart as a whip. And, and she spoke the way I would hope, although I'm not 100% sure, the way I hope my wife would have spoken if it was me. She might have said, but, you never know for sure. I think that's probably why he did it. And I thought he comes across, at least in my mind, unless you're just a Drew backer, you can see it still bothers him. You can see that. But at the same token, you can also see that, he recognizes, what it is and what happened, but I thought Bruschi at the end of that thing, he really hit the nail on the head there. Because
$100 million quarterback, and he could have ripped it apart.
Sure. I know there were coaches, and they sort of hinted at this in one of the episodes. I know there were coaches when they heard that Bledsoe was out indefinitely. At least one I know for sure who called his wife and said, "Get the house ready for sale because we're not." So any mythology that they knew that Drew that Brady was going to become what he became is nonsensical. Which reminds me of one other thing. I don't know what you guys thought about it. This was also involved Pioli. When Pioli at one point is talking about they're in the draft room, and Pioli said, and we kept looking at Tom's name up there at the top of our. That is BS.
It is.
Tom's name wasn't. It was like underneath on the back side of the chalkboard. You had to turn the board around to find his name, with the exception of Dick Rabine, who kept.
Dick Rabine was the guy.
Right, and if there's no Rabine, there's no Brady. And again, that's one of those follow-up questions that, you guys know me more than on.
I was shocked that Rabine's name wasn't even mentioned in that.
Never mentioned. And one of the things where I ask in the questions, I would have said to Pioli, well, if that's the case, why did you drop a tight end from Montana 3 slots ahead of when you took Brady? What are you talking about? His name is jumping off the board, but let's take the guy from Montana. I mean, what are you talking about? It's nonsense.
All right, Ronnie, I got to do a commercial here because I know
you're money. I get it.
We're trying to. We're just trying to scratch out a living as best we can. And as Lynchy asked your question last time, it'll be a different question this time, right, Mike?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, it will be a little different. Yeah.
All right. Good. That's a boy, Mike. Get a boy. Just stay with the program. Campers, get ready for the 2024 season with a new RV. We're here in this year, and we're ready to roll. Cold Springs RV is the latest in pop-ups and travel trailers and fifth wheelers and motorhomes. And when you need RV or service, get the Cold Springs RV in Ware, New Hampshire, just west of Goffstown, north of Dracut. Go out on the all-new Winnebago. Check them out. Winnebago Access Travel Trailer. You could be in one now, heading south. By the way, Mike, I'm leaving tomorrow for for Hilton Head.
Oh, good for you.
But I'm just driving.
Are you going to take one of those RVs?
I was going to jump into Winnebago and give it a shot.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. That's yours. Okay. Just down there, beautiful Hilton Head.
It's not bad, right?
Pretty good.
Okay, anyway, fifth wheelers, motorhomes, Winnebago Access Travel Trailers. Don't forget to tell them Lobel and Mike Lynch sent you. Learn more at coldspringsrv.com. You know where to find them, and we know where to find you. Mike, the question for Ron Borges today.
All right, Ron. We all know John Madden had the Madden Cruiser, and Cold Springs RV is still in the developmental stages of the Lobel Lynchy Cruiser. But
I like it.
Since we don't pay anybody, we're going to let you use the Lobel Lynchy Cruiser for a week when it finally is made. So last time I asked you, you could take anybody you want to ride shotgun with you. This week, you have to pick one of the principals that was interviewed in Dynasty. Now, we've all seen the trailer where all the talking heads come up really fast. So all the people that have been or will be interviewed, you get to ride cross country and just have a conversation with them. Who would you pick?
Oh, Ty Law, Party Hardy. I mean, Ty's the best. Yeah. Ty will tell you everything, and he'll do it with enthusiasm. He's been tremendous on this thing. Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Bingo. We've got bingo. One of the great celebration lines of all time.
He would tell you things, even if you didn't ask him, he'd tell you stuff.
He was spectacular. I mean, all these guys had so much energy. The one guy who popped up out of nowhere, and honest to God, I thought I was watching like.
Don't tell me Randy Moss.
No, well, Moss was great. He was spectacular.
Moss was great.
Bill Parcells. Yeah. What was he doing in there?
Oh my God! There's another story we haven't even touched on.
What was he doing there?
Kraft Parcells. Wait a minute. Wait, Mike. You're right. What was he doing there? But why were they like Robert saying that Bill Parcells was more about Bill Parcells than he was about the team? That's not the guy I knew. Right. But I don't get that. To me, was stunning.
Well, I think that, and I agree with you. I had a lot of respect for Parcells. I mean, it really, everyone seems to have forgotten now, but it was really Parcells. The first rash of season ticket sales was Bill Parcells, who was not signed by Kraft. Orthwine brought him in. Remember that day after they signed him, that rush down, they sold over 9,000 season tickets, doubled their season ticket sales in one day because of his appearance. I was a little surprised by that for a couple of reasons. One, it was a way to show that although the Kraft Productions has a lot of control over this, they didn't have total control because Parcells was off the rails right off the bat, that whole thing. And I thought it when you saw the two guys speak, even in they're now both in their 80s, you can see why they just couldn't get along. It couldn't work because Kraft was young and as an owner, and Parcells is right, inexperienced. He didn't know really what we're talking about. And Bill, on the other hand, thinks he invented football. He knows all the mysteries, and nobody else knows anything. And so, when he was with the Giants, he didn't pick the players. Tom Boyster picked the players, and George Young, who was the general manager, sort of refereed between the two warring parties there. But he didn't have final say on the roster. He thought he had it, or he did sort of have it when Orthwein was here. And then a new owner comes in, and we all know we've all worked for new owners. Suddenly, everything that you thought you had written down, it was in invisible ink, and so you could see where that was kind of going. And Parcells, if you look at his history, and I love Parcells, I think he's one of the great coaches ever. But Parcells always struck me as a better mannered Billy Martin. I mean, you got a bad situation, he comes in and he takes it from bad to good, and it doesn't take him that long to do it. And then, as the owner of the Detroit Tigers said to me one time after firing Martin, I said, "How could you fire Billy Martin? You never won anything until Billy Martin got it." He said, "I know, but finally it gets to the point that winning's just not worth it." So, boom. But yeah, I was really taken aback by A, his presence, and B, what he said. And not so much what he said, but that it stayed in the film.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I mean, they could have just hit the delete button, and that thing was out of there.
Oh,
but
sure.
Even
Kraft, if Kraft had come in there and told those guys, "I don't want that in there,"
yeah,
I think it comes out.
I mean, even the way he came in, the video went from the side. It was almost like Vincent Price. I couldn't even tell who it was at the beginning. And I said, "Oh my God, that's Parcells!"
Right.
And there he was, just sitting there staring into the camera, and I'm saying something profound is going to come out of those lips. And he does. He usually doesn't disappoint.
No. Oh no. And the idea that, look, on the one hand, Bill history and teams after 4 or 5 years is looking to get out. So if Kraft meant it that sort of way, that I'm thinking about 25 years owning a team, and this guy's looking to get out of here. And he was the last couple of years, I know that Bill did basically sort of say, "Well, we'll see at the end of the season where I'm at," and I'm sure that can grind on an owner. But the flip side is that's what the owner's doing. I don't care how long your contract is. As Belichick just found out, it's often not as long as you think it is. So that's a two-way street. But it was an interesting juxtaposition and tension. You really could see why it all came down the way it did. Now, I will say this: anybody who thinks for 1 minute that Bill Parcells was distracted from trying to win that Super Bowl is a moron. Because that was just not the case. They didn't win that Super Bowl, I've always felt, because partially, because Troy Brown got that hamstring injury, and he would have made that tackle more than likely on that kickoff, because that was his spot where he went through. But he couldn't play. So, history gets written by somebody else. And it also would have helped. I love to tell this story because it says so much about coaching. That week, Ray Perkins, if you remember, was the offensive coordinator. And they're in meetings. And, you guys know Perkins. He wasn't exactly the most exciting guy to be around.
Yeah.
And he's telling the offense that Max Lane's going to block Reggie White one-on-one because he knows something about Reggie White. And he commences, according to what I was told, to launch into White doesn't like to play on turf, so he doesn't put his full effort out there on turf, and blah, blah, blah. And Bledsoe said to him in the meeting, Are you really telling me that Reggie White's not going to give full effort in the Super Bowl? I know some things about Reggie White. Well, if you remember, when the critical moment of the game came, Reggie White ragdolled Max Lane on 3 different plays and killed Bledsoe. Bledsoe came to the sidelines after one of those sacks and hollered to Perkins, "He looks pretty good on turf today." But they left Max one-on-one, which is who blocked. The only guy I know of who was ever asked to block Reggie White one-on-one. Now there may have been others, Anthony Moon. The only one I know for sure was Mark Bavaro, who Parcells used to say, and Mark has told me many times, I didn't really block him. I just got in the way. Just beat me up instead of beating up Sims,
Great stuff.
It was Bledsoe did have a great line about Parcells. So right after Parcells, he said in that game he was focused. He's sort of contradicting you here a little bit, Ron, but that Parcells was distracted and focused on the Jets that week. That's what Drew said in that interview.
Yeah, well, he did, and I can see why players might feel that way. I just know the guy too well to know that wasn't the case. They were fully prepared for the game. They just weren't as good as the pack. If they had won the game, was he going to get extra credit for just this unfocused coach who led him to the? Who wants to win more than Bill Parcells? I don't know too many guys who do. And they didn't say that. To the best of my knowledge, nobody said Charlie Weiss wasn't focused for their 3rd Super Bowl win when he was, lining up his staff for Notre Dame during that week.
Right.
He wasn't. So if you win, it's like I said earlier. The winners write the history. If you win, it was not a problem. If you lose, that's why you lost.
Now, these are 4 episodes we've seen. What about the other 6 we haven't? As we've heard, it gets worse for Belichick.
Well, I've been told that the Hernandez one is really good.
That's what I've heard too. That Hernandez one is really,
which would be hard to do because we've seen so many, Hernandez documentaries and books and so forth. I don't know what more they can come up with, but I was surprised by one thing and I think this is no secret anymore, but and I didn't know this at the time. Apparently, Deion Branch was a guy who was befriended him and really tried to, which you couldn't be 2 more opposite personalities than Deion, where the sun is always shining, and Hernandez, who was, gangsta wannabe. So that I'll be interested to see what Branch has to say about, that relationship and how the thing all sort of broke down. But yeah, I've heard that one's good. And look, we're all going to be waiting for the last couple because that's going to be that'll be quite an assassination, I think, at that point.
Yeah.
What question was raised? Well, a good friend of mine called this sports porn. Watching this dynasty is like sports porn. And in a way, he's right. You don't want to miss an episode.
Right.
But the question he had is, why did Kraft want this done? Was it to get it? His theory is simply to get into the Hall of Fame. That this was his theory, not mine.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just offering out there that the bottom reason that this was all done and financed by the Kraft Corporation Industries, paper hangers, whatever they are. I know. I was a simple
cardboard boxes.
I was simple paid businessman running a paper business.
Right. Yeah, that was great.
What did I know about football? That was right. Okay. Your reaction to that?
I don't know if that's the case. I mean, I don't think it's going to help them one way or the other. I mean, I think I've been on that committee now for nearly 25 years, but I'm not on the subcommittee that picks the contributor / coach that they bring out for the whole group to vote on. I know he had a lot more wind under his sails 3 or 4 years ago than he has now. And I think that, Belichick is suffering from a little bit of that too. When everything so clearly changes, for your side, when one guy leaves and nothing changes for the guy who left, it's hard not to say, well, oh, wait a minute. Who was really the guy? The owner? The guy. I'm not a big advocate of owners in the Hall of Fame, other than the guys who the original guys who created the league, and when it was worth nothing.
Yeah.
And, those guys, they were builders. But the Jerry Joneses and the Eddie DeBartolos and Pat Bolins, and how much does any owner, no disrespect to owners because they do sign the checks, but how much do they really have to do with the day-to-day operation of the team? Zero, right? It's like,
Well, some owners feel they've contributed more than you're giving them credit for.
well, and financially, certainly they have, but I remember when DeBartolo was up, one of his supporters was saying, he discovered Bill Walsh. Paul Brown wouldn't hire Bill Walsh to coach the Bengals, and I said, yeah, well, he discovered 3 other coaches who were terrible before he discovered Bill Walsh. So did he discover him, or did he trip over him? Stacking around in the dark. It's. I just think that they don't have as much to do with, unless you just want to say, well, that they make a lot of money and they spend a lot of money. That's, true. But as we've seen in the case of the Patriots here, which I've been saying for how many decades that I say they weren't spending and nobody wanted to believe it. Well, now it's all out there that they, because they don't.
There was
cash spending and moving numbers around, 2 different things.
There was a
So
survey.
I think maybe it's an effort on his. I mean, what do you guys think? Do you think that's why he did? I think it was more of, I want to make sure the history is written the way
I see it.
I see it.
Right.
You can't blame him for that.
The way I want to be remembered.
Right.
And he's got control over this whole episode, and
Right.
Executive producer over Jeff Benedict, and I agree. He's got control, and he wants to be remembered the way he's like Willie. I said this to Bob Ryan last time he was on. He's like Willie Loman in Death of a Salesman. He doesn't want to be liked. He wants to be well liked.
Right.
And that's important to him. It's so important to him.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. And look, somebody's going to do a Belichick one at some point. Whether it's next year or 5 years from now, and I'm sure that will be a whole different tale than the one we're hearing now. Would be my guess. And so he was smart probably to say, "Oh, I'm going to beat the dealer here," and it the model there, the Jordan documentary model. Jordan had control over that. In terms of the things he didn't like, they didn't go in there. So that's pretty common if you're going to do one of these things. It is interesting to me how many people, like the Parcells, agreed to do it. It's still like, wow.
I'm still shaking my head. I'm still shaking, and especially the way they just panned from like right to left, and I said, "Who is this guy?" They made him look like he was 110 years old.
Right.
For something with the lighting and the makeup or whatever, he did not look good.
Right.
But the reality was, you had to tell Parcells had to be part of the story. I mean,
but he didn't have
to leave him out, Mike, would have been a gross way of pointing out this really is my production, and I'm left out everything, including the orchids of Asia.
I'm pretty sure that won't be in there.
Just saying, the Parcells, because
speaking about Hall of Fame problems, that's a little bit of a problem, a little bit.
Anyway, there's a survey that just came out, and it's online. I haven't seen it in print, but it was done at the Combine. All teams ranked overall with about 7 different categories. The Patriots ranked 29th. The Chargers, the Chiefs, and the Commanders were only worse than the Patriots. But they were done like treatment of families, food, nutrition, locker room, weight room, strength coach, head coach. It's really fascinating. The Patriots got an F- in treatment of families.
Wow.
I think they ranked 30th in weight room. They got an F and ranked 32nd in head coach. I'm just saying, this is fabulous. It's
Well,
just
did you guys see? And I didn't see it. I didn't hear it. Somebody told me about it this week. Apparently, Pete Carroll did some interview with somebody out in Seattle recently, talking about his career and all that. And he talked about when he first got to New England, and he went to Kraft about the food, the players, they're eating bologna sandwiches, and he said, I knew then we were going to have a problem. And it's like, wow. Now I'll tell you honestly, and I'm in the minority on this, I used to tell the players this: if I'm paying you like $several million, I don't think I have to buy you lunch. I really don't. I really don't feel that I have to do that.
fair enough.
I don't know about you guys. Nobody paid me $1 million, and nobody paid for my lunch in these places. So it's but yeah, that's not a great look when they're putting you down at every turn. And I want to see more of Belichick, because I hear there's more of him, and that the visuals are. Oh, you're right. The visuals are all like that, right? Like he's on the rack, So it doesn't help. I don't think he's helping himself, or people like Ernie are helping him, even if they think they are, with some of the things that they're saying or the way he's looking. Like
The Malcolm Butler thing's got to come up, right?
I would think so. I mean, that's the one. One of the great quasi mysteries of all. I mean, if you want to talk about a guy or a situation, at least in my opinion, you guys may differ, who put something else ahead of winning, it was that day.
Yeah.
Because I don't care, what he did. At some point in that game, they had two choices. They could put me in or him in, and they'd be better off in either case compared to those slappies that were out there trying to cover the Eagles receivers.
I know.
I mean, oh my God, it was unbelievable. And for him to just leave them there, it's like, what are you doing? That.
Right. Well, it's.
Hey, let me ask you guys one question. What did you make of Mike Martz?
Oh, you know what? Just what I thought he was. And I'm the best, and you're not even going to touch me, Mike Martz. Whatever decision I make is always going to be right. I'm never wrong, Mike Martz.
Yeah. Who the hell did he think he was?
He's throwing 40-yard passes, and against the defense that was expecting 40-yard passes, because they videotaped him in a walkthrough.
Oh, well, Ty Law's reaction to that interception. It's like, you're going to throw that ball? Really?
Right. He said the easiest interception he ever made.
Right. I mean, like he said, those are the ones you usually drop because it's so easy that you think, oh, no.
What did you think of Mike Martz? Same thing, right?
Yeah. I mean, I thought he was authentic, as I know him. That's him, and he was, when he was complaining about the physicality, and look, they were very physical on him, and they did get away with a lot. But that just shows you, the intelligence of the other coach. Belichick knew they're going to throw 20 flags. They're not going to throw 20 flags in the Super Bowl.
Right.
So, okay, they get us a couple times. And Bill Polian still talks about the championship game against the Colts when it's my favorite Ty Law play, when he grabbed Marvin Harrison by the jersey and literally threw him into the Gatorade table and sidelines. Gatorade's flying all over the place. He's got it all over his jersey. The table's upside down on top of him. No call. It's like, so it, but that's Martz. There's no question about it. And you can see why Belichick was, clearly smart enough to understand that this guy's not going to stop throwing. I asked Ted Johnson one time, what would have happened if Martz had suddenly said to Warner, just give the ball to Falk? He said they would have trampled us. He said there was nobody there to tackle him.
Yeah.
Because we were beating up the receivers. And if they had just run the ball up the middle of the field, we couldn't have stopped them. Which may or may not have been the case, but certainly that was the way to attack them.
I'm surprised they left the Bucky Jones play out of that.
Yeah, you're right. A lot of stuff did get. I thought they skipped over the second and third Super Bowls almost like they didn't happen, but maybe you got to do that because there's so much stuff, I guess. But
Yeah.
it was like, I remember watching, thinking, did they win those two those games,
No.
or what? And and I'll tell you one other thing, I do feel I can now say this. The other thing that bothered me was the discussion about the Super Bowl, the almost undefeated season. As an old boxing PR guy, a friend of mine, who used to send out these things that would say, Bob Lobel's going to fight the nearly undefeated Mike Lynch. And if he found any writer who actually wrote it as nearly undefeated, then he'd call him up and say, "You idiot! You're either undefeated or you're not. You're not nearly undefeated." But that was the Pats. But to talk about that zero blitz call, I have on overwhelmingly good authority. You won't have to be any genius to guess who. That call was the only defensive call all season not made by Dean Pease. Dean Pease did not call that zero blitz. Yeah, and to me, because they told that story about Moss, how he was dogging Pease the next season in practice. One of the reasons Pease left at the end of that season, and somebody should have stood up and said, "I made that call. He didn't make that call." But that person didn't do that. And next thing you know, Pease was retiring to write music, and a year later, he's the Ravens defensive coordinator for the next decade. So.
Hey, if you're thinking about a new vehicle, go where Lobel and Lynchy go. Go see our good friend George Gray at George Gray's Lexington Toyota. We've been customers for years, and we know that George Gray will treat you, your family, your friends, anybody you bring over there, they will take great, great care of you. They're a family-owned and operated dealership that we trust and you can trust as well. Go see the great George Gray, the big wheel we call him, at George Gray's Lexington Toyota, 409 Mass Ave in Lexington. Stop by there. You will not be sorry that you did. Mention that Lobel and Lynchy sent you over there. Who are the other faces that you've seen real fast in that trailer that haven't been on yet? Are you looking forward to hearing from?
I don't remember. Well, as I said, Dion's the one I really want to hear from.
Yeah.
I had no idea that they were.
Amendola hasn't been on yet.
Yeah, Amendola hasn't. I have seen some of that, and he sounds like he beats up the coach pretty good.
Yeah.
And Gronkowski, I'm sure, will beat Gronkowski. I don't know what he's going to say, but whatever he says, it'll be like, what? So he'll be sort of fascinating, I'm sure.
Are we done seeing the Gronkowski kick, or is that just going to continue on and on and on?
Yeah, I've seen enough of that, I think. I'll tell you one person I thought was surprising. Not surprised that she was good because she's a bright woman and everything, but Brady's sister, talking about him as a kid, in particular, I found the fact I made my son sit down and watch it, who's a 17-year-old would-be hockey player, talking about working on his speed, but he doesn't want to do the 5-dot drill. It makes me go crazy. But that's a separate issue. And they tell that story about him deciding he had to get faster, and the next thing you know, he's painted the 5-dot drill on the driveway, and he's doing it over and over and over and over and over again. It's not that. So even at that age, as whatever he was, 17, 18 years old, that's who he was. And I always thought that was the key to his, not his success, but his long-term success, was that unlike nearly every other player I ever met, I always think their mind goes before their body goes in a lot of cases. They're just bored. It's like, okay, I want to play the games, but do I really want to sit in here and watch 5 hours of the Kansas City Chiefs defense? No, I don't, because I've watched 500 hours. And he would never change.
I have one question for both of you, a football question. This would be the last contribution of the day for me. In the Spygate season, starting off with the Jets, and then trampling everybody else in their wake, all the way until the Giants, right? All the way right to the end, the Spygate thing. It shows you how much motivation is in football, how important motivation is. I mean, that team had motivation. They had to overcome what was put in front of them in Spygate. and the way they rip through the season is an example to me of the driving force in football, and that's the motivation to play.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Mike was a player. Mike knows, that it's such a physical game. It's a point comes during the year where you've got to find some external ways to keep going because your body's saying enough already, especially the way they play, and it's hard to maintain that. I know when we go to a Super Bowl and you watch the start of the game, and I always used to, when I would see one team just leaping around like a crazy person, I always used to think they're going to die like a dog here in about 15 minutes because you just can't expend that much energy. And they through a whole season just sort of did have that chip on their shoulder that, led by their coach, quite frankly, who just ran it up on an aged Joe Gibbs. It's just
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily pretty, but it was.
No.
They were motivated.
for sure.
Two things about that Giants game. One, the Giants played the same type of defensive game that the Patriots played when they beat the Rams in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
They were hitting their receivers, hitting anybody coming out of the backfield. But even before that started, when I saw Belichick wearing a red top, he's never done that before. And here they are looking to go perfect, 19-0. He's either had a navy blue windbreaker on or he's had the sloppy gray hoodie on. And he's got a red thing cut off. And I'm saying, what is he doing that for? Somebody must be paying him to wear it. I don't know.
They wanted to be Harvard.
A different color red. That game was funny because one of the feelings I had before that game was that the one chance the Giants had was if they could get to the quarterback with just their front four. And I reminded people in something I wrote that every one of these guys has been a Pro Bowl player. Every one of their four frontline defensive linemen. And if they play like that today, this could be a real problem that they can't solve. And to me, they won the game for them. You can talk about Eli all you want.
Was there any? When you saw that Eli play?
Yeah.
The pass to Tyree. When I saw it in the different angles that they had and talk about the production, you even now wonder how the hell he ever got out of that. How was it?
How did the whistle not blow that he was in the grass?
It was even more remarkable that he got out of that. It wasn't just Richard Seymour; it was 4 other guys.
Right. Oh yeah. They had a hold of his jersey. But it harkened back to the Patriots' first Super Bowl, and that the officials are going to give you as much rope as they can give you. That they're not going to give you in October. They're going to, and the catch itself. I mean, I always thought the way Rodney Harrison played the ball there, if he just come up and nailed him in the back, the ball goes probably flying, but instead he was sort of half trying to play the ball while at the same time trying to tackle the guy.
You think Rodney Harrison hasn't thought about that?
Oh, I think when he goes to sleep at night, he sees it a lot.
Every day.
And I also thought that Tyree was lucky in that when he came down, Rodney's body was between him and the ground. So it wasn't like, bang, you hit the ground, the ball comes flying out, and they say no catch. It was almost like there was a pillow there between, as one of my old boxing pals used to say when you see a bad fight, pillow fight. And it was sort of like that. He's kind of lightly came down and landed. And, it was.
How about the Moss play at the end? I forgot how close Moss came. He said he touched it.
He did.
He actually touched the ball at the last play. I mean, amazing. The whole
I mean, to me,
set of circumstances is just.
I mean, the defensive guy made a good play on it, and he got his hand up there just enough. And now I'm going to sound pretty like hardcore football about it, but to me, that's the difference between Jerry Rice, Don Hudson, and Randy Moss and those guys. They catch that ball. You as good as Moss was, you'll never convince me he was better than Rice because I never saw Rice not catch a ball like that. Some guys make those catches, some guys don't. And it wasn't an easy catch. So, don't get me wrong, the defenders were right there and everything like that, but the
Right.
ball was in a pretty good spot to catch it.
But I forgot. To me, I just, we're watching under the stands. We're not allowed out on the field.
Right.
We're all in that cattle call at the under. So you never really got to see it. You were worried about post game and all that other BS.
Right. And there's a tendency to think it was overthrown more
Yes.
than it was, and it wasn't. I mean, it was about as good a ball as you could get in that circumstance. But, you believe in karma. There you go. You want to run it up on Joe Gibbs and all these guys? You want to cheat and all these guys? Well, okay, we're not going to let you catch this ball.
Amazing. Now, what about, we haven't even Deflategate. We haven't even gotten to that.
Oof. Can you imagine what that's going to? I have heard about that one. I know what you guys heard, but I did hear that I don't know if it's Brady or somebody else expresses his shock at the way that press conference went, where he was getting it from all sides, including me, frankly. I remember it was
not his shining moment.
No. Well, I remember he was not happy with me after, because you guys will recall he made a soliloquy about how carefully he picked the balls. And, he knew the balls, and blah, 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 blah. And I said, well, when he got done, I said, well, Tom, if you know the ball so well, how could you not notice when they were underinflated? What are you talking about? He just went on a 5-minute thing about how, carefully you pick the balls. And I can tell you one other thing. Tim Hasselbeck told me this story at the time. Any idea that it was anybody but the quarterback and his minions in the equipment department involved, this should dissuade you from that. Tim was his a first-year NFL quarterback. I forget what team he was on at the time. He was a backup, So it's the first Saturday of the season, and that's when the quarterbacks go down and look at the balls with you, pick out the ones they want to put in the bag. So they got a bunch, dozens of balls there, and I don't know who the starting quarterback was. But he's picking a couple balls. He throw them in the bag. He says, "I don't want this one." And Tim picks up one of the balls, and the guy turned on him, like he just saw him using his toothbrush. He put that goddamn ball down. You don't touch those balls. It's like, Jesus, I'm a quarterback too. Well, no, you're not. You're just a backup. Leave those balls alone. Yeah.
Wow.
So they're pretty. Most quarterbacks are pretty testy about picking the balls they want. That's going to be an interesting one, how they handle that, and how much we hear about what was the thing that they published? That's in context, the Deflategate context or whatever it was.
The air pressure that.
Yeah, right.
Right. The whole whatever. Right.
Right.
More likely than not. Right?
More likely than not. Right.
More likely than not.
And don't you guys think that it's similar to the Spygate thing?
Yeah.
In terms of the percentage of difference. Now, if you got a tiny little hand, you got like a little flipper like this, maybe okay. And if you got some big massive hand like this, maybe you want a different kind of.
But see, what else would you want? I'm sure. Wouldn't you want a guy like Ernie Adams or somebody like that to be looking for the edges?
Oh, sure.
That'll win you games. It depends.
The Raiders were always accused of.
Right. What do you want, and how far are you willing to go to get it?
Yeah. Well, the Steelers always used to accuse the Raiders when they were playing that they had the kicking balls right next to the blower, and so then when Ray Guy would hit the thing, it would be like filled with helium, just boom, and the thing would take off, and I wouldn't be totally surprised if that didn't happen occasionally. There's a lot of that going on, but you get caught, and it just.
I made a mistake.
Right. I can assure you one thing, and I have not seen the episode, but the two equipment guys will not be in this film. I can assure you of that.
They may make their own film after this.
Yeah, they should. Right. They can make a lot of money.
Ronnie, you were great. You were just great.
Driving up to New Hampshire and trying to get this guy when he get out of his car, coming to his house with the groceries, like he was convicted felon or something.
Mike, tell that story.
Oh, yeah.
What's that?
That story you were just talking about.
No, I didn't drive up there.
No. But the whole what you were just saying about him going up to New Hampshire, about going after this guy.
No, I didn't do any of that.
Oh, you
No,
saw.
People
no,
did
it's
do
serious. I don't recall.
No, people did do it. Yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah,
They stopped in
people
front of
did,
his
but I
house,
didn't.
and they tracked down. I know there was some people who tracked down Walsh in Hawaii. He was working at some golf course in Hawaii.
It was, I know.
Yeah, and he talked a little bit, but not. It was always this sort of, he was like uh, Ernie Adams in training. Just talk a little bit, but not too
To
much.
the grave.
All right, to the grave. That's it.
Ronnie, you were great.
What do you think kind of a phone call there was from Belichick to Ernie Adams after Belichick saw that to the grave? I bet there was a loud call there. Oh my
I don't
goodness.
think Belichick was too happy with this documentary.
No, I imagine not. And I don't imagine he's looking forward to the there he is.
Yeah.
Right. Like
Just
wouldn't you think that Bears or one of his minions would have said, "Hey Bill, man, you look like you're going to the electric chair,"
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just,
I'm telling you, it was done over a year ago, and I don't know that they had a concept of what it was going to be.
right.
It's the only excuse. I'm going to say this again. You were great, Ronnie. You were always great.
Unbelievable.
Trying to have some fun. Trying to have some fun with it.
No, I love it. I learned so much from having you on. I just really love these stories, and you're the best. You have so much information. So
the beauty of all this kind of stuff is it really doesn't. It's really unimportant. I mean, it's not life. And the fact that some people can't laugh at some of these things, even this many years. I mean, I got friends that say, every year on the date of that 07 Super Bowl, I can't sleep. Like, well, then you're an idiot. I mean, what are you talking about? Were you going to make money off it? Like, if it cost you a lot of money because Randy Moss didn't catch the ball, okay, but it's just sports.
how many books have you written?
3. I got one coming out in May, and then I'm working on a proposal right now for one that it's a football one that could be kind of interesting, Patriot related one if it works out. We'll see if it does.
Well, come on, here's a chance to be a Lou Ambriano. I saw your Facebook post.
Yeah, Lou's out there hustling his book like crazy. I never got to the.
I'm just asking. Okay, cool. So tell us.
Yeah, well, I got a collection of my boxing stuff is coming out in May. I had a book that came out 2 years ago on Christy Martin, the fighter, the woman fighter who really the coal miner's daughter, who basically created women's boxing. There's been a number of documentaries done, and we did sell that to the movies, so we'll see. She got a tremendous story. She was a closeted woman for 20 years, for her whole life, basically, until her husband, quote unquote, /trainer /manager /abuser, shot and stabbed her and nearly killed her. And 6 months later, she fought again. So, which was that was her. She's the toughest person I've ever met. I met a lot of tough people, but she's like 10 miles of detour. Boy.
Sounds like a great movie.
Yeah. No, it's great. It's good. And the book's called "Fighting for Survival." Everybody wants a good story. It's
good. I'm glad you're talking about it. What about the next one, the Patriots?
Well, again, we're still in a negotiating stage of a player who may want to tell his story, and we've been working on it a little bit. And it's it's interesting because the dynamics of everything going on down. I mean, this thing that I didn't hear it. Elliot Wolf, the new general manager, I guess. I know it was him or some of the other minions out there, basically talking about now people are smiling in the building for the first time in 20 years. Which I always heard. That it was the relentlessly unhappy pursuit of excellence down there. And imagine that every day for 20 years. You got to act like you're unhappy. Or they make you unhappy. So, if we end up doing it, it's going to be sort of an inside look at both the bright side and the dark side of a dynasty.
I'm not going to even guess who it is, but I won't say it anyway. You want me to say who I guess who it is? You're not.
Sure, good.
I would guess it was Ted Johnson.
No.
Okay. All right. That's fine. I feel satisfied. Then I'm sure they'll be surprised. Tell us. Come on.
No, I can't do it. It's sworn to secrecy. But
okay. All right. All right.
Hopefully, when if we make the deal, well, then everybody will know.
Okay. Good.
But it's an interesting story. That you could have all that success wrapped around so much unpleasantness. When I was around the Raiders, obviously those Raiders teams were great, man. They won 75% of their games. Those Super Bowls. It wasn't like that. I mean, they had their ups and downs and crazy stuff happens. You expect that, but not this just misery kind of thing. Same with the 49ers. I mean, it just I don't get
No
it.
joy in Mudville.
Yeah, I don't get it. I mean, Mike, you were around Bill all the time. I mean, did you get that sense of it? That it just didn't.
Yeah, they just everything was serious. Everything was. I mean, he would kind of laugh before the red light went on, and he'd say he actually chuckled and was kind of funny. But once the red light went on, it was all seriousness, and we were on pins and needles waiting for him to come in the room and make sure that every camera worked, every microphone worked, because you didn't want to have him storm out because somebody's microphone wasn't working. So, there was remember when John Thompson was the first guy that brought Hoya Paranoia in.
Yeah,
it was very similar to that.
Yeah, good call.
Around Foxborough. That thing always came to my mind when I was thinking about it.
The next 2 issues of Sports Porn will be dropping on Friday, so just.
I think the second one is the Hernandez one. I think, isn't it?
That would be 5 and 6, right? Yeah, I think you're right.
I think it is. So, looking forward to that one. I'm
great job, buddy.
Thanks,
I have
Ron.
to get it on my phone. I got to be in Toronto this weekend. I'm supervising a title fight up there for one of these sanctioning organizations. So hopefully I can get it on my phone because I'll be breaking out in prickly heat if I can't see it.
You're an important guy. So I'll be in South Carolina. I have to look on my phone too. So there you go.
You'll be hitting golf balls. I'll be making snowballs.
That's true. All right. Good job, Ronnie. Thank you so much.
Great, Ron Borges. Thanks so much. Make sure you follow us at UnAnchoredBoston.com.